So like I said, home stretch, we're going to spend another hour and a half or so, depending on where our conversation takes us. Again, this is panel number 2, a part of this 3-part series where we're trying to drive more clarity and more connection and understand how to leverage our partners along the process. We talked this morning or this afternoon about mindset shifts. Then we talked about leveraging some of the language and tools. And again, we're winding down here talking about how to now leverage people, partners, to help really drive value and align business, personal, and financial goals. This panel, as I said, as a reminder this morning, I said that this panel, in particular for me when I was thinking about this panel, I think many advisors tend to wait to use these folks until the end, right in the decide gate. But I actually think that these folks can be utilized throughout the value acceleration methodology and probably earlier and more often. So I want to have a conversation with that. So I'm going to start just straight down the line with basically the question that I ended panel 1 with. And so the question really is, most, if not all of us here on this panel are typically considered functional advisors that come in at a specific point during the methodology. Typically, we would see you guys in the decide gate, maybe in the prepare gate. For a question for everybody, we'll just go straight down the line. How can CEPAs leverage your expertise earlier on to better support their business owner conversations that lead to owner activation and thus getting them into the methodology? Please.
Yeah, so I'd say the first point is just understanding, what you bring to the table a lot of the times is what the owner mindset is, the objectives, the pain points. What we're here to do is fill different tool obligations for you, be different tools for the actual exit itself. And so lots of times, knowing those objectives, we can create opportunities that you might not know is there. So I myself work on ESOPs. One of the things that many times people think about is ESOP is an exit. So let's wait until 60, 65 to start evaluating that as an option. Many times instead, what is helpful is knowing, let's say you have a business owner client who's 50, 55, wants to stay in the business for 10, 15 more years, knowing that you have an ESOP option where you could create some diversification, sell 30 or 40% up front, create an opportunity, diversify, take some tax savings off the table, help your employees, and create a seamless transition so they're prepared to fully exit on their timeline, 5, 10, 15 years down the line. But in the meantime, create that opportunity to really get liquidity off the table, diversify where they otherwise wouldn't be thinking about exits at all. Right.
Thanks, Mike. My name is Jerry Spitzer. We work on ESOPs as well. I'd say, the CEPAs, what you bring to the table is that we can triage a client, talk to a business owner for a period of time, ask a lot of the personal questions, the business questions, really get a good understanding of where he or she is looking to go. And then our role really is to say, okay, which direction should we start pointing them? It's a long process, but is it a strategic sale? Is it private equity, or is it an ESOP? Obviously, we favor ESOPs, but there's plenty of good things about the other 2 options as well. But putting the team around, the CEPA's really goal here is to put a team around the client. If the client wants to proceed, the right estate attorney, the right tax people, the right CPA. Does the client have an existing CPA that may be a little on the weaker side when it comes to an exit transaction? So the CEPA's really role here is to recognize who are the right players to put around this client to really get a transaction done. As I always say, the most important thing about the transaction is finding the A team. So our goal, if we're the first line of contact for that business owner, is to put the A team around the client. Find the best people that you think are the best people to work with that client to get a transaction done seamlessly, and it's going to work out in the end for everybody.
Cool. I'll come from the investment banking side. As Scott talks about, it's all about education. And we, in our process, have our second step is that discovery call of sitting down with them, that owner, and just we can talk about the pros and cons of all the different options. And yes, we do third-party sales, but there's ESOPs, there's internal transfers, and just what all those pros and cons are, because most times when we talk with a client, when we ask them, how many options do you know? It's like, well, I'm either going to give it to my kids or management team, or I'm going to sell it to my competitor. And those might be some of the worst options that they have, and there's so many more options out there. So what are the options? What's going on in the marketplace right now? What's in the M&A marketplace? Is it a good time to sell? Is it not a good time to sell? What's specifically going on in your industry? We can bring a lot of different insights. And again, we look at our goal in that discovery phase is just to help them make well-informed decisions. Not tell them what they want to hear, but just help them understand so they can make better decisions moving forward, whatever that might be. And then lastly is all about what we call the RMA, or the real market analysis, is sitting down with them at the discovery side and making sure they understand what is their business truly worth in today's M&A marketplace. Because we did a national study like Scott did, like EPI did, and we found that over 60% have never had an RMA or any kind of professional evaluation ever, let alone in the last year or two when it really matters. So understanding what that number is, what is that real number, what are other companies like they're selling for, what are the industry experts telling us that are in our alliance, what are buyers talking to us about, again, on a confidential basis. And now once they know that number, now they can sit down and start working on the tax. They can sit down with a financial advisor and look at what we call the lifestyle number and just see where is that wealth gap. Because they might find out that, hey, it's already closed and I can sell sooner than I thought and live life and get on to the next chapter of your life. Or they might find that the wealth gap is much larger than they thought, but they still have that time and energy to make those changes to get to where they need to be versus waiting until they're burnt out, come to us right before they want to sell, and now they've got no time to change if the number's not what they thought it was.
Hi everyone, Zoe, co-founder and CEO at Common Trust. We help business owners who care about continuity to exit through employee ownership. We specialize in an approach called employee ownership trusts, which probably not many folks are yet aware of because it's really kind of grown over the last 5 to 10 years. And we work with a lot of advisors through this process. So we work with business owners and their advisors in the planning process, the structuring process, design and execution, all the way through rolling it out to the companies and their teams. I would say, in my humble and wildly biased opinion, I think that employee ownership is one of the best ways to exit your company. I realize not everyone agrees with me, but 100% of business owners should have this as an option on the table. No business owner is hurt by having a competitive process. So we really work with advisors to ensure that their business owners, their clients actually know that employee ownership is an option, ESOPs and EOTs are an option. So we work throughout that full process with folks.
Fred Gratz with U.S. Energy Development. We are a 45-year-old oil and gas investment firm, specialty within tax planning. But I think at the end of the day, whatever permutation of that exit, there's going to be some kind of a tax hit. So what I would say is just understand what are those options. Understanding some of those optionalities up front, which just kind of helps dismantle them later on, right? As Joe just pointed out on the last part of the session, where if you can kind of go out there and just do the opposite, right? What was their bad experience? If it's going to be a tax discussion, it's going to be painful. So if you can outline their ways out of that ahead of time, it just helps them get more comfortable with the exit itself.
I'm Jason Kimball with Generational Group. We're a sell-side M&A advisor. I head up the business valuation practice. June 5th will be my 20th year with the firm. And I'll say that one thing that helps get engaged early in the process and stay engaged throughout is helping to educate the owners on the different aspects of timing involved. A lot of times they just focus on one, maybe two aspects of that timing, but we found there's really three aspects of timing that are crucial to get the most out of a transaction. One, of course, is their personal timing. When is a good time for them to sell personally? The second is when is a good time for the business to sell in terms of where it is in its cycle. And third would just be the general economic timing, right? So rarely are all three of those lined up when the owner thinks they're ready to pull the trigger. And if we can educate them on how that process typically works and when those cycles may be, and give them a good idea where we think they are with the business, where we think the economy is, then they can decide when to line all three of those up, ideally to get the deal done. One of the benefits of us being engaged with clients and having been doing it so long is every year we'll sell deals with clients that initially signed up with us 12 years prior, 15 years prior, 18 years prior. And if we can tell some of those stories on why did it take 18 years to get a deal done, and educate the client on what that looked like and what that process was, hopefully we can get them to realize that it won't be an 18-year process, but if they can get ahead of it, we can at least get it done in a timely manner that works well and works best to get the most out of the deal.
I'm Jason Bush. My firm is Commercial Real Estate Strategic Advisory, and Linville Team Partners, that's my primary brokerage partner that I'm a part owner of as well. My role is, well, let me take a step back. Unless you're a pure home-based business, or your business is kind of like chucking a truck, or it's a pure technology play, there's a high likelihood that your business occupies commercial real estate. And I think inherently understand that the value and the attractiveness and the saleability of a business, there's a direct tangible link between the business itself and the level of support and benefits that business receives from the commercial real estate in which it occupies. And so one of the key steps that our firm takes on is working with the business owner, but it's primarily through other CEPAs, other advisors that already have this existing client relationship. And our role really is to help that advisory team, help the business owner understand their real estate scenario. And this applies to a business owner whether or not they lease or own the real estate. We're really trying to debug this relationship between the business and the real estate asset that they occupy. And the way we do that is really we just try to assess what is their real estate scenario. And if you can envision this spectrum, like a scenario living between the good end of the spectrum is being totally buttoned up, like there's nothing I need to do for you, and then the other end of the spectrum being hot mess. And I've seen businesses, real estate scenarios live everywhere along that spectrum. And really our goal in this process as advisors is to provide proactive solutions to that messy component of their real estate scenario, to provide that business owner transactional flexibility, to increase their probability of success, whatever that transactional event might turn into, which could be growth, could be maintenance, it could be an exit. So yeah, that's what we do.
Thank you. So by actively implementing the value acceleration methodology, not only do we gain clarity as a business owner, but I think we gain options. And I think that's really one of the ultimate goals, is that you can sit there and say, maybe it's an ESOP, maybe it's a family, maybe it's a family transition, maybe it's a third-party sale, or maybe it's a combination of those along the way. I think too many owners think that they only get one bite of the apple when they could actually have multiple. As you're growing your business and growing value in your business, it becomes even more valuable than it is today, and thus even perhaps a bigger chunk of your financial portfolio. I looked, and for ESOP folks on the panel, I saw a piece of research that said roughly 25 million Americans have some form of employee ownership. So, Michael, just go down the list, go down the line here, and for our ESOP experts, it says, my question would be, as our employee ownership experts, why is this advantageous for both owner and employee?
Let's start with the owners. And the first thing the owners question is this perceived complexity to ESOPs. And I'd be lying to say they aren't complex. They are. You have to put like I said before, you have to put a team of people around the deal. So I'm going to start out with, I'm not a good salesperson. I'm starting out with the negatives, but those are that negative, and also you're putting professionals around. There's definitely fees involved. So those are the two big things. It is complex, and there are professional fees involved. But this is definitely the square peg in the square hole. If you have somebody or a client that fits into this, it is the greatest thing that you could do. You know, I'm passionate, as Mike and I are, on ESOPs. So for the owner, let's start with control. You sell to private equity. Scott, don't hit me. You sell to private equity. Do you lose control? Yes, you do. However you want to call that. If you sell a minority stake, maybe not. But generally, you can lose control. In an ESOP, the owner can keep control of the company. Okay? The owner, if it's a legacy company that's been around for generations and maybe their kids don't want to go in the business, they don't know what to do, how to sell, this is a way you keep the legacy, keep the name in the family, okay? Employees, Mike's going to address that in a second, but the employees win here too. They become owners of the company, and Mike will explain to you the benefits of that as well. Senior executive team that aren't selling shares, they're not participating in the sale, okay? But senior executives can get issued SARs, stock appreciation rights, and can be worked into an ESOP deal, so they are extremely motivated to kind of grow earnings, grow valuation for the future of the company. So I hate to say this, everybody wins in this transaction. I've laid out the challenges of the transaction, but literally everybody wins in these transactions if it's the right. And I'll say, again, Scott may hit me again, but I'd say why, people are asked, why are there only 7,000 ESOPs in this country? And Mike may have a different answer than me, but my answer is that if I own a cement company, and I'm not financially astute necessarily, but I know how to run a cement company and how to grow a cement company, and I'm looking to exit, who do I call? I'll probably call my attorney or my CPA. And I'd say 95% of middle market investment bankers in this country do strategics and private equity and don't do ESOPs, like a CSG. So I'd say that the probability is high that that owner never even gets to see what an ESOP will look like, which I think is a shame. Like, I do think that the owner needs to go in there with an open mind and compare a private equity transaction to a strategic, to an ESOP, look at the benefits and costs to all three, and really evaluate. This should not be a decision that is rushed.
Yeah, I'd second a lot of that. I think one other point from an owner's perspective as well that many times is overlooked, probably most overlooked benefit for the owners or companies that sell to ESOPs is the flexibility you have in structuring a transaction. So lots of times, a lot of the tax benefits get thrown out there. The change or lack of change of control gets thrown out there. But in general, when we evaluate what type of transaction best aligns with the owner's mindset and goals, that's why I was saying earlier, we need to know what those goals are, what are the pain points. We can structure the transaction around that. So sell a minority stake, sell a majority stake, do it over time, do it alongside estate planning, do it alongside real estate transactions. There's a lot of optionality because at the end of the day, the buyer, the ESOP, doesn't care what that structure is as long as it's negotiated at a fair price. So that's one thing that I just plant a seed out there. When you go to evaluate an ESOP for any of your clients, you're not going to come back with one possible option that's just off the shelf. This is what an ESOP looks like. You should really find an advisor that's evaluating countless different things and creating a tailored or bespoke transaction, because that's the greatest benefit we have in the ESOP space. As far as the employees go, I mean, obviously it's called an employee stock ownership trust, right? So there is employee ownership. That's critical. That's the reason there are all these tax benefits. ESOP-owned companies have about 50% less turnover than non-ESOP companies. Household net worth of employees of ESOPs is dramatically higher, I think about 100% higher than non-ESOPs. Productivity at the company is about 5% higher in the year of a transaction, 2.5% every year thereafter. So there's tons of benefits that show if you motivate, communicate the ESOP and employee ownership well, it can have profound effects. The last thing I've mentioned for the employees is obviously it's a long-term strategy, right? When you sell to an ESOP, they don't get all the shares all at once. It's over time. You have to communicate it very well. It has to come alongside an education piece. And so it's not an easy switch that you just flip on. I sold to an ESOP, now everyone's happy and it's going to work harder. That's not reality. I think everyone knows that. It's a long-term investment into the ownership of the culture that you're creating.
So, Ann, can you elaborate when you kind of answer this question too around the difference between the ESOP and the employee ownership trust as well?
Just before we get to that, Zoe, I'm sorry. I have one last comment, just once again, a terrible salesperson. Does everybody here have owners that don't like to pay taxes? Raise your hand. Okay. So you can structure an ESOP under Section 1042 that both my firm works on, Mike's firm works on, 1042 transaction as a C Corp. So if you're an S today or an LLC, you can switch to a C, but you can sell all of your company stock as a C Corp in an ESOP, capital gains tax-free. So for a $50 million company, 35%, if you're lucky enough to live in New Jersey like I do, where the capital gains tax is 11% plus your capital gains tax rate, you're looking at close to 35%. So you can save that is structured properly.
So I'm gonna get to your question. I want to add one thing to what they were talking about as well. I think that employee ownership is better for business owners, it's better for employees, and it's better for the business itself. There's actually a lot of research on the performance of employee-owned companies. They have a 50% lower bankruptcy rate compared to their peers in recessions. So these are companies that are going to endure over the long term. I'll give you an example of a company we worked with. They're called Clegg Auto, based in Utah. We worked with Kevin Clegg and his brother when his brother wanted to get out of the business. Kevin wanted to stay in, but didn't want to sell to a strategic. So we helped them set up an employee ownership trust as an exit strategy to get liquidity for his brother. In their first year since transitioning, they doubled the profits at the business. They distributed their highest bonuses in company history. And the piece that really gets me is they also had their highest client satisfaction rating in 30 years of company history. So I think it's a really telling example of what is possible under this model. Scott, you asked what is the difference between an employee ownership trust and an ESOP? ESOPs have been around for a long time. They come with tremendous tax benefits. Employee ownership trusts are relatively newer here in the United States. So they've really kind of been picking up steam over the last, I would say, 5 years or so. And an employee ownership trust is going to own the shares of the business for the benefit of employees. A couple of the reasons why business owners are really interested in this approach is it is very simple to set up and very affordable. So for business owners who are considering that as they're thinking about their transaction, this is a really simple way to transition to employee ownership. The next piece is it's very flexible. You can do a full sale, you can do a partial sale, you can do a phased transaction. We've actually been seeing several owners, to your point about control, who've been wanting to exit gradually over time. And so with this structure, you can really easily set it up such that someone is exiting either at the point of the sale or over time as they are progressively stepping out of the business. The last thing I'd say about employee ownership trusts is they are incredibly customizable. And so a lot of the owners that we are working with and their advisors are using this as a legal structure to specifically code the values and culture that they want to see protected into the legal vehicle. So Kevin Clegg, this example that I shared, one of the reasons he was afraid of selling to some of the strategics is he was afraid his core value of client satisfaction and customer service would get erased after that sale. And so they literally coded that into the legal structure itself so he can be sure, even when he steps back, those core values that have made this business special will endure.
Cool, thank you. So let's flip to the other side, the external external transitions for Scott and Jason. So on the flip side, you have the sale to the third party. The range of value that is presented in the value acceleration methodology showcases us what's best in class, and it showcases the value gap, range of multiples, and range of value that our companies might have. So Jason, why don't you lead us off and we'll work back over to Scott. Can you talk about what leads towards what we would call outlier multiples, these best in class multiples, and what makes the strongest transferable business?
Yeah, I think there's two sides to that. One is what we can control and help influence as the M&A advisor, and those are what we can consult the business owner on doing in terms of the business. So from our perspective, premium offers come if we've done three things properly. One is package the business properly, meaning getting it ready to sell, cleaning things up, dressing it up, accurately telling the story. Very few businesses are ready to pull the trigger without the help of people in the room here to help package them. The other is putting together a good list of buyers, right? We have to be approaching the right people. Every business is worth a different amount to different people. If we can find those that the business is going to be worth the most to, that's where we have the chances of getting a premium offer. And then the third would be running the process correctly. When I was registering and downloading the app, it said you had to put a tagline in there, and I said we help business owners navigate the 972 parts of the exit process. So just saying, there's a lot that goes into running the process properly, and there's a lot that goes into running it in the correct order. So if we do those three things, we're going to maximize the chance for premium offers. And then obviously just in terms of what we can do to help the business and consult on the business, a lot of us in the room know these things at heart, and it's inherent to us, but sometimes it's counterintuitive to a business owner. What might be those things? One is just dependence on the owner, right? A lot of business owners pride themselves on what they do and everything they do in the business, from cleaning the floors to keeping the books to leading the sales to drafting the plans and everything in between. If we can educate them, that makes a business a little harder to sell for a premium, and get them to start to wrap their head around that, who they could cross-train for different things and different processes and people that they might be able to bring in, the more likely we are to get premium offers. And the other one that is often counterintuitive to the owner that we all know in the room, of course, is the customer concentration issue. It's just really hard to get a premium offer done when you have a really big, heavy customer in the business. A lot of times our client loves it because it's been their number one key customer for 15 years. They don't have to have any effort sales-wise, and they get to have a good relationship with that. But if we can just help educate them on how important it is to pick up some other accounts and get a few other things done, there's going to be some good premium offers done. So I think that's the high-level things that can be done to get those outlier multiples.
Scott, you want to elaborate?
Yeah, elaborate on a couple things that Jason talked about. Yeah, with the customer concentration, what we usually see is if the top customer is 25% or less, 20, 25% or less, it's okay. Once you get over that 25 threshold, that's where it's going to start to affect either value, structure, or some buyers just walk away. Because, again, you think about a business, anything that's a single point of failure, the business owner is the business, one big customer. One thing falls apart and the whole company can fall apart. That definitely lowers the value. So how do you mitigate that risk? And then also with sales, not all sales are the same. Is it something where they're transactional, they do one thing, they work with the customer once and they never work with them again? Do they have repeat customers, which is more interesting? Or do they have reoccurring revenue, which each of those will increase the value of the business and the multiples? When I'm asked, speaking around the country, what could I do as a business owner to help have a better chance of selling my company or getting these multiples? At the highest level, it's preparing sooner. It's having that, for all of you to have the conversation with your clients sooner, because what we found in our national study is that 54% of business owners said, I'm not talking to anybody, because if anybody finds out I'm talking to somebody, all my employees are going to leave. So they're scared to death to talk to anybody, so they just sit there and wait. And so preparing sooner and then building that team of experts around them. And that's why we're part of EPI and part of this partnership, because it's all about bringing that community together. But at the end of the day, we've coined a term of what truly gets the outlier multiples, because what we've seen so many times is, they can build up the value of the business, they can do all those things right, they can work with all of you to enhance the value of the company, and then they accept an unsolicited offer. And I will tell you that, and in our study, the owner said 55% of the times, if they assumed it was a reasonable deal, they would do the deal, but yet 60% of them never had a valuation to begin with. Think about that. 55% said they would do the deal. And just to I'll give you a story, and then we'll talk about how we cure that. We had a client that we were working with. We just closed it about 6 months ago, and they were working with a private equity firm, and they started at $6 million and worked up to $10 million. But as they got higher in the negotiations, one-on-one, their value went $5 million cash at close and then $5 million in earnout. And as it got higher, the earnout got less and less likely. Their financial advisor brought us in and said, hey, can you talk with it's a husband-wife team, can you talk with them? They're not sure. So we said, yeah, let's start with discovery call. Then we did the RMA. The RMA came back at $10 million. But we said, on average, we're seeing about, for a company like this, 80 to 85% cash at close. And they said, well, they're giving 5, we can give 8 million. Yeah, let's move forward. Let's go through the process. Because again, a lot of business owners don't want to go through the process because they're scared. What if this buyer is the best buyer? What if they leave after if I tell them I'm going to go into a process? And I can tell you that they'll threaten it, but in 6 years at Cornerstone, our experience is they never leave. They don't like it. And in fact, in this case, they said, look, we can't pay more than $10 million. That's the most we can pay. If you don't like it, we're out of here. We went from 5 all the way to 10. We doubled our offer. They sent an email to that buyer and said, because they said, what should we do with this buyer? I said, send an email saying, we want to do this right. We get one chance to do this. We're going to work with Cornerstone. We're going to like you guys, and we'll keep you in the process. Within 5 minutes of her hitting send, the phone rang, and it was the buyer going, what's it going to take for you not to sign with Cornerstone? How much more money do you want to not sign with Cornerstone? Because they knew if we ran a process like Jason talked about, and you get multiple offers, the price was going to go up. In that deal, we closed at $14 million, and we got $9 or $10 million at close. So it shows that what we call that is, everybody sort of FOMO, the fear of missing out. We've called it POMO, the power of multiple offers. And because you could do everything right, but if you work with one buyer and one seller, These buyers have looked at, I've run panels with different buyers, corporate buyers, private equity, and like private equity will look at 5,000 deals in a year to put 80 offers in about 60 to 80 and buy 5 to 6. They get one chance to do this. It's their life's work. They've never done it before. 76% in our study founded the company, so they have no idea they've not bought a company before, so they have no idea what they're up against. And that's what it's all about, is bringing multiple offers together. That's the only way that the business owner will ever have that peace of mind that they can choose who's the best fit for them. Is it something that protects my employees, as I'm surrounded by employee people up here? I protected my employees, protected my culture, most money at close. That's the nice thing with a strategic or a private equity is in a third-party sale, you get the majority of money at close versus having with internal deals, you might have to hold on, wait for 7 years to get your money, and then what happens if the market changes or something happens or the employees don't do as good a job as you thought they're going to do. So getting that money at close, being able to choose and having that peace of mind, that's what happens when you get multiple offers, and that's where you drive that highest value. And we've seen things from 25 to 31 million. We ran a process, and we got $51.3 million. So it gives you an idea of what the multiple offers can do.
Let's switch over to the tax mitigation side. Fred, maybe you can kick us off here. I think that in studying owners as well, one of the hot topics that they are interested in learning about is how do I mitigate taxes? So from your experience, can you provide some insights into what asset classes owners should be aware of?
Yeah, there's a host out there, right? And the cool part is, especially in the last couple of years, it's opened up quite a bit. And what's nice now is that you don't just have to settle for writing that check to the IRS, right? Whether it's ordinary income or capital gains, there are a host of ways that you can get your clients out of those tax bills. And what's more than that is even on the securitized part, right? So what my company offers, and probably several others that might be here as well, you have a lot of different styles where clients have this ability to have this tax alpha conversation, right? So the fun part about this is, and it kind of, to me, it reminds me, and I think it was Justin Goodbread who just posted this recently, if he's here today, about having that gravity, right? What's that value prop? And that is that ultimate kind of deliverable where you can have those conversations that just start with what's the outcome, right? Not the company behind it, not the product, not the features and benefits, but what is it that you're delivering, right? Because they all want that. And that's really where you can have some very unique conversations with clients that are facing some kind of a tax hit, whatever it is. There are so many different styles of structures and investments that you can utilize to get them out of that. And that's ultimately what they're looking for. So I think that's one of the bigger ones that you can look for. But having those conversations, right, as far as delivering that value as that drawback to you. And I think there's probably about a dozen or so, in our space in energy, there's about a dozen or so case planning concepts or those strategies that you can have with investors. And most of the time, guys, your competition is not talking about these. Whether they don't have access or they don't know about it. So the point is just know what the optionality is, because when you have those conversations, if it's tax related, they're the most important things to the biggest and best clients out there. And when those conversations come up, and think of that $5, $10, $20 million client, each one of these guys has a 30, 40, $50 million buddy that you don't know yet. So mastering even the 30-second version of that tax discussion can help kind of have those head-turning conversations, which ultimately lead you guys to where you're looking to be.
Thank you. Anybody else have comments on tax mitigation, whether it's a real estate side, an ESOP side that you can share?
So I think getting back to who here knows about 1042? Okay, it's a pretty small group. I know Mike does. 1031. Does everybody know what 1031 is? Okay, everybody raise their hand for 1031. 1042 is the same thing as 1031. It's an exchange, except you're exchanging for closely held privately company stock into qualified replacement property. And Scott's going to kill me if I start explaining qualified replacement property on this panel, which I will not do. But I'll just tell you, if you do a little bit of research or talk to Mike and I, basically 1042 will allow that C Corp to move those assets, the sale price, into qualified replacement property and rid yourself of the capital gains tax. And what you can do is, one option, there's real estate that I'm sure Mike's going to talk about, there's floating rate notes, there's different options for QRP, what they call qualified replacement property. One option is floating rate notes. So if a 70-year-old client, we buy 40-year floating rate notes, basically what will happen is you get a step up in basis because the note's going to outlive that client. And then eventually what you're doing is you're basically selling your company and the money is going to your heirs completely tax-free. So that's 1042, and if everybody's really interested, take a look or let us know at Questor. We'll help you out.
Anybody else?
I'll just say on third-party sales, what we've seen lately is just because of the competition out there, most times a stock deal gets better tax treatment than an asset deal does for your sellers. And we're getting deals done where they are going to the stock sale just to win the deal. So again, more buyers and sellers, we're getting some pretty good tax treatments as well.
Go ahead.
And on the real estate side, you know, everybody's hand went up really, really quickly when you asked if people know about a 1031 exchange. That's one of many, many tax defer or tax avoidance alternatives that are out there that exist regarding real estate. Who's ever used a 453A or 453B plan for real estate? Probably nobody, right? But you can. It gets you the same tax treatment as a 1031 exchange. So one of the themes that we talk about in our service of it's transactional support, which is not just brokerage, right? We got to get ourselves out of this headspace of solving the real estate problem is buying or selling. Transactional support means, yeah, of course, people buy, sell, and lease locations to support their business, but when they exit, a large component of determining and maximizing the value of their exit is bringing the right resources to the table that match their real estate scenario that they've created for themselves to create tax-efficient alternatives. And there's lots more beyond just a 1031 exchange.
So let's continue and talk a little bit about the real estate. I think you teed this up actually nicely when we started, is that most of these transactions likely have a real estate component to them, and I want to kind of talk about it amongst the panel because I actually think it's something that we don't necessarily talk enough about inside of the Exit Planning Institute community. So Jason is our real estate expert here on the panel. What should owners and their advisors be talking about early and often? Gain clarity and connection.
Sure. Yeah, so Scott, don't frame that as a weakness. Frame it as an opportunity, right? Talking about real estate more. Quick show of hands, again, just to get some audience engagement. Who is working with a business owner whose business either leases or owns commercial real estate? Every hand should go up, right? It's universal, right? The tricky bit is every hand that went up, you likely have a business owner that has a very unique real estate scenario, right? If I ask enough questions, I can probably isolate every single business owner's real estate scenario to make it unique like a snowflake. But what we find in our space is that regardless of the variety of the real estate scenario, there's about 5 common themes that we can deploy, or themes of service that we can deploy either with you as the primary advisor or with a team of advisors that bring, you know, collaborative support to the table. There's about 5 common themes. A majority of business owners lease their locations. There's 6.2 million commercial buildings in the U.S. That doesn't include multifamily, nor does it include rural properties like farms and, you know, there's more than 6.2 million. It's a lot, right? And a majority of business owners lease those locations. And so the first theme is helping that business owner understand what on earth does their lease say? You'd be shocked how little a business owner can tell you about their lease terms. They can tell you when the rent's due and how much it is, and they can likely tell you what their original lease term was. But it's rare that they can go in depth to explain something beyond economic terms and actually isolate the other components of the lease that might severely impact their ability to even value the business or potentially even sell the business. I see, Scott, you're already nodding your head. You know what I'm talking about. Tons of business owners will look at the expiration of a lease term or like, hey, I've got 6 months left in my lease. Now might be the time to sell my business. That couldn't be more wrong in terms of a timing event. They think about it completely 100% backwards in terms of they minimize the impact of lack of term of your lease location. They look at it as a benefit when actually it's probably one of the biggest deal risks that you have to manage when selling your business. So that's theme 1, is understanding the leasing transaction that you've agreed to. The rest of the themes really kick in and they start to get fun when the business owner also owns the real estate. The next biggest theme is mindset. And how does the business owner look at their business and look at their real estate? Do they look at them as a combined mess and all owned by one LLC? Do they look at the real estate as an asset of the business? Or do they visualize it as two distinct separate entities? Because recommended practice is you got to treat them and visualize them as two separate distinct entities. Your business has the ability to be valued and traded independently. Your real estate does as well. And so one of the biggest benefits that we find with working with these owners is getting them in the proper headspace to recognize that, oh, these are two separate things. I need to treat them accordingly. Because you can value them independently, you can sell them independently. And you can maximize the value of the real estate when you view them independently. So that's theme 2. Theme 3 is once you get them to visualize them almost like as an operating company and a property company, then you have to have them establish proper legal entities for owning those assets. You need to have one LLC or one legal entity that owns your business. You have to have a separate one that owns your real estate. It's simple. It's like de-risking 101, like the simplest of our methodology concepts. De-risk your business, right? If you own a business long enough, someone's going to sue you. Don't give them access to your real estate, right? Simple. And get it out of your personal name. So have two separate legal entities. That's when I really work with the estate planners and the attorneys to determine what is the proper legal entity that it needs to be held in. But, and I'm generally agnostic as to what that is, depending upon estate planning needs, but I definitely do not want to see real estate owned in an S corp. That minimizes your upstream tax benefits, tax mitigation benefits that you can get upon sale. So that's theme 3. Theme 4 is once you've got proper legal entities, now you have to structure a proper leasing transaction between your OpCo and your PropCo. And that's ideally creating a triple net lease at market rates and terms, such that now you can almost dial in and create the value of your real estate, right? And so one of the underutilized components of our methodology is looking at real estate as a component of an owner's net worth. Here, we've got a technique where we can craft that net worth, by structuring a leasing relationship that essentially creates value in the real estate entity. So we're building net worth at this stage. And then the last theme, and this is the one I partially touched on earlier, which is that transactional support. Tax mitigation strategies fall into that category, but also you want to have the best possible resources should you decide to sell your assets, be it business or real estate, to maximize your probability of success. So in the real estate world, you know, if you've got a client that's got a 30,000 square foot warehouse in Des Moines, Iowa, I want to find you the right broker to sell that resource. You know, I'll go to the market, I'll interview, I'll vet, and I'll present to that business owner, here's the best 2 options for you that have experience in that asset class that are going to help you sell this time and get the max results for it. And it would be no different that if they were trying to sell their business, like I'm going to turn to Scott because they're great, right? They're going to represent you in the best possible way. So that was a lot, but that's the opportunity that I see as we try to expand the methodology and touch real estate on a more consistent basis.
Scott or Jason, from a third-party sales standpoint, anything that we should be considering for real estate from your perspective?
Yeah, what we see is many times the buyer who buys the business does not want the real estate. So they'll either, you know, we ask the owner, do you want, we call it mailbox money, where you set up that triple net lease and they set up a 5-10 year lease and then they still own the asset. Or some people just like, if I sell the business, I want to be done with everything. And then we turn to someone like Jason and say, okay, you know, do we want to do a sale lease back? You know, what are we going to do to sell that property? But there are definitely options out there, like you talked about, a lot of different options with the real estate that most owners don't know.
One thing we'll advise the owners on early in the process is be open. Don't be too set on one or the other. Let us get offers in front of you. And then that can help really guide the decision at that point. But sometimes they'll really get locked into thinking what they think will be the best thing for them and their business, and they may be taking some good offers off the table otherwise.
What about from the employee ownership standpoint? How are we looking at real estate if we're doing an ESOP or a employee ownership trust?
Yeah, so I think Jason did a very good job. I mean, think about flexibility, optionality, and evaluate what is best for the goals here. When you're selling to an ESOP, again, something I mentioned earlier, the buyer doesn't care what they're buying so much as it's fair market value and it's a good transaction. So they're not coming with a strategic mindset saying we want to control the real estate, we don't want to control the real estate. It's open to what's best for the owner and the company. So generally speaking, we evaluate three different options. One, when you sell to an ESOP, you could keep the property, keep mailbox money, as Scott mentioned. Many times, it's probably what most of our clients do. They hold the real estate long term, collect the check, and then after 5, 10 years, they'll probably sell that real estate either to a third party or to a built-in buyer with the ESOP. So add it to the company with the ESOP as a second liquidity transaction down the line. The second option is pursuing a sale-leaseback alongside the ESOP. Many of our clients do that. They want to exit the business. They view the real estate as having the same risks or similar risks as the business in terms of concentration. They want to diversify. That's an option. And then the third is you could actually include the real estate in the ESOP sale as well. So sell the company and the real estate or property together to the ESOP in one fell swoop.
You touched on some good points. So did Scott earlier, right? Where you were referencing, right, the business owner is willing to contemplate an offer sometimes without a baseline for understanding, like, is it a decent offer or not, right? That unsolicited offer comes in. And that's a real problem that we encounter in the real estate world also, is that they really don't, commonly, they don't have a baseline for what is possible, right? So it's really common that we're going to come in, we'll do an initial estimate of the value of the business, right? And if you, and our recommended course of action, we can take you from X to Y, right? There's a process where we can increase your valuation. The same concepts apply in real estate too, where, given your current condition, I can come in and provide you an opinion of value. But more importantly, I'm also going to give you a list of recommendations that if you consider doing steps, A through Z, we might be able to change your value from X to Y. And a key component of that is also another missing point of their baseline knowledge, which is what are market-based rents and terms, right? The time to learn that isn't when you're doing a take-back to EBITDA, right, or an adjustment to EBITDA. The time to do that is when you're formulating your strategic plan. Now you can understand, like, oh, my real estate could be worth this, and that can impact my exit strategy in various ways. Yeah.
Anything else on the ESOP side?
Just one more thing on the real estate. So when we see it, sometimes the real estate's inside the business, and that's probably the worst thing that they can do, because now they go, oh yeah, I don't pay any rent, so my EBIT is higher, so I'll get a higher value, but you're leaving the real estate in the business.
It's the worst possible thing
And
you can do.
even if it was in the business, we would carve it out and say, no, we're going to carve it out, put it in a separate LLC, charge rent to the company, which lowers the business value, but now you're getting that real estate at least at full value. And then if you did a sale leaseback, you'd even get an investment grade, which would be higher than that. Unless you're getting a 10 times multiple or more for your business, you got to pull the real estate out of the business. Otherwise, you're just giving away an asset for a lot less than what market is.
So I want to talk about leveraging tools, right? We've talked kind of all about our expertise and maybe perhaps leveraging some of the more technical components that you guys bring to the table. Our prior panel, the previous panel, also talked about tools that CEPA could be utilizing. When I think about that, I think, Scott, like the RMA, or Jason, we talked about in your award nomination, the top 10 questions to ask about real estate. Or Fred, honestly, I think it would be interesting too, because Fred, I think, is pretty new to the EPI community, and then also a functional advisor. So maybe, Fred, can you kick off a little bit about how tools or content that CEPAs could leverage to bring more clarity?
Sometimes it's better to be maybe a good thief if you're not creative. So I'll go back to, like, Joe Strazzeri. So I had the pleasure about a year ago to going out to San Diego and spending a day or two with their group. If you haven't done that, and Joe, I don't know if you still do that, but guys, it is phenomenal. Advanced tax stuff. I've been in the tax world for pushing 20 years, and I was finding out stuff that I didn't know. So there's just so much out there. So my point is, one of the things that you'll hear him say is, be the guy that, fill in the blank. Right? Show of hands, how many of you, if someone had to say, be the guy that, do you guys have that blank? Right? Do you guys have what that is? Right? And some of the vets here, I'm sure you do. But for the newer guys, and this, to Scott's credit, EPI's exploded. A lot of you guys probably are new. Dial that in, right? And if you don't have that, there is going to be more than a couple of different sponsors or partners or other CEPAs here at the conference that can help you fill that in. So just as an example, right? So all we do is our really high-end case planning concepts in tax strategy. So be the guy that, and you could be the guy that's doing all of that capital gains planning, right? So you can talk about qualified opportunity zones. Joe and Shelley do a lot of really cool things for cap gains that are outside the scope of that, but you can dial it even further, right? How many of you guys have clients that have IRAs that They would like to convert them to a tax-free Roth, but they don't, right? It's tax tail investment dog, kick the can. Be the guy that helps them convert that with a zero tax bill, right? Or take it further for those that are already in that stage where they're taking cash flow out, that they're taking RMDs. Your wealthy clients hate that. Be the guy that gets them tax-free RMDs. There's dozens of these, right? I'm not going to take all of the stage time and go through all of these, but there's a number of these kind of concepts that's at the end of the day, that's what these guys care about, right? Your 8-figure and up clients, that's really what they're looking for. In some way, it's always a tax pain, and there are a host of things, and I'm probably just one small subset that does this, that are part of the conference, but just know what's out there. Know the 101 level stuff, the 30-second elevator pitch, and then just know who to go to when you need to be at 301, 401.
Please, Mike, you want to add?
Yeah, no, I think that's a very good point. You know, one example, you know, last year we had a conversation with the CEPA who's basically told us, look, I have this veterinary clinic, it's the largest clinic left in the hospital left in the country that's not sold to corporate. And they want to do something, a transition that's good for their employees. They don't want to sell to third party. They were being courted by virtually every platform left out there. But the CEPA said, look, until I spoke with one of my colleagues, they thought that if you sell to an ESOP, it has to be at a 5 or 6 times multiple. If anyone here has dealt with veterinary hospitals and the transactions being done, you know it's being well into the teens. And so what we always advise, you know, as Zoe mentioned before, is make sure it's on the table. Make sure they're evaluating what the option is, get the valuation done. Our firm, many other firms, you know, what they'll do is an analysis up front that says, if you were to do an ESOP, given your goals, this is how we would structure it, this is what the valuation would be, this is what the capital raise would look like, the terms of which, this is what it'll look like after tax over 5, 10, 15, 20 years for you, your management team, your family, your employees, everyone. So you go into it eyes wide open and, you know, look, if it's not the right strategy, if you could do better with private equity or strategic sale that better aligns with your objectives, then do it. But don't make the decision without really evaluating all those different options. And I think that's what everyone in this room is able to do, is make sure that the options are on the table to make sure your clients get the best possible solution for their transaction.
I think educating the client, as our role as CEPAs here, is really just making sure the client looks at all the available options, the strategic, right, the private equity, and the ESOP. And we did a deal up in Boston, a tire and auto company up in Boston, and you know, joking around with the owner, I was like, so how did you find out about ESOPs? Because we weren't the one that was the proponent. And he said, well, I was at a Publix supermarket. Publix is the largest ESOP in the country. Everybody here from Florida? You know Publix. So he's at the deli counter making small talk, getting roast beef cut for him, right? So he's like, he sees a sign that says, we are 100% employee owned. And he says to the guy cutting his meat, and he's like, so what does that mean? He goes, what it means is I have $1 million in my ESOP account. So when I go to retire, I have a 401k and I have an ESOP. So I think, you know, all of us just want to make sure, and that's just an education of like, he went back and basically called his lawyer, and that's how they got the ESOP done, which is kind of an amazing story. But anyway, that's why it's our role is just to give the client as many options, you know, that make sense to them as you can.
Cool. Scott?
Yeah, some of the tools that we put together at Cornerstone, and we're at Booth 500, is we have, we just like EPI, I was so impressed with the EPI's national study they did in 13 and 2023 that we did our own in 25, all around the mindset of the seller. So we have a white paper down there that will help you understand what they're thinking, why they think what they think, when do they want to get out, why wouldn't they, what have they done for valuation. It's really informative. I think it'd be a good read. And then we also, because we work with so many financial advisors, we asked a lot of questions around who's your trusted advisor and what do you expect from them. And it was amazing. What we found out is that 72% of business owners, again, 45 to 75, 5 to 100 million in revenue, said for the financial advisor, the trusted advisor, we expect this from you. It's your job to help me get an accurate valuation, maximize my value, and minimize my taxes. And if not, I'm going to leave and find somebody else. The old rapport of, hey, if I take them out golfing or do this or do that with him or her, and we're friendly, that's going to win the day through a sale. And the sale is the largest transaction they're ever going to do. They're so emotional, they're so vulnerable. It's like giving up one of their kids for adoption is what most of my clients talk about. And they're at their most vulnerable point, and your relationship is not going to carry the day, is what the survey said. In fact, when we asked, why would you leave your financial advisor after the sale, one of the answers was, I wouldn't leave him or her. They're good for me now, and they'll absolutely be good for me afterwards. The problem was the answer on that was 4%. So for people not in this room, they should be scared to death because it's people like you that are training and that are going to take that opportunity. So I would look at it as be excited that we have 96% of the clients out there that are open for a conversation. And that's what we do at Cornerstone is we help you start the conversation. We'll do no cost, no obligation, discovery calls with you and your client. We have Brian Coast, I don't know if he's here, but his job is just as a liaison. We have Cornerstone Advisory Partners Exit Program or CapEx program. And that program is just for all of you in this room, the trusted advisor, to ask questions, get questionnaires that we've seen be really successful, how to start the conversation, that discovery gate, and a lot of tools, a lot of resources, and then that ultimately that RMA, that real market analysis, rooted in what are deals actually getting done, not a range. Because what happens if I tell you your client, the value is 10 to 15 million, what is your client here? 15 million all day long, all day long. So we're talking about what is the number, not what they want to hear, but what is the number, so then they can see, what is my net number, what's my lifestyle number, do I have a wealth gap, and all of those different things. So those are the things that we're here to help you start the conversation, because what we found that, why would I stay with my advisor? Because they helped me figure out what my lifestyle needs would be and started the conversation and introduced me to the right team. Why would I leave them? Number one, they didn't have that conversation, a simple conversation. Number two, they didn't provide any value. Number three, they brought me the wrong value or the wrong tax treatment thoughts. And that's why they leave. Not size, not fees, none of those things. It's just about a conversation getting started. And that's where we're here to help and get that RMA. Because once you get the real value, now you can start doing the tax. Now you can start doing the financial planning and start making more intelligent decisions.
That 10 to 15 and only hearing the 15 is so real. So in my experience, when we are talking to owners about employee ownership, one of three things is going to happen. Either they've never heard of employee ownership as an exit strategy and didn't even realize it was possible. Two, they're going to come in with a lot of myths about employee ownership. I can't tell you how many conversations I have with folks where they say, does that mean everyone votes on everything at the company? And then the third is they may have actually gone and done a fair amount of research. They may have talked to ESOP folks, they may have researched EOTs, but they're kind of swimming in a conceptual, abstract level of education and really need to understand, what does this mean for me and my business? So when it comes to tools, one of the tools we actually built for business owners and their advisors is an employee ownership planning tool. This allows business owners to really map out what are their goals through this transition, and then what are the viable employee ownership buyout transactions that could actually work for them and their business according to their goals. In my experience working with advisors and their clients with this process, oftentimes, the first set of transaction structures that they're gonna look at are not the right ones. But more importantly, looking at the numbers and the different ways of approaching things prompts those deeper conversations about what are they actually looking for through this transaction. When they have to look at trade-offs between different things, what matters most to them? So that's one of the tools that we built really to help educate more folks, because again, oftentimes this conversation is something that happens 18 months, 3 years, 5 years ahead of a sale process, and the more that you and your clients can be thinking about this earlier on, the more you can be optimizing for a sale that actually meets their goals.
Jump over to Jason. I think you let us off, Fred.
Yeah, one of the tools I focused on developing last year, and it relates to capturing data and knowledge and trying to put it in a good reporting method. I think all of us here have a lot of that information at our disposal in our heads, but being able to print out reports and things like that, much more powerful. So we'll transact in the neighborhood of 200 deals a year, and we always did a pretty good job of capturing the data points regarding those data in terms of the valuation multiples and the structure of the deal, but we weren't doing it on the offers received, right? So we're receiving many multiples of that number in terms of the offers on the business, and now we've done a good job of capturing all the data on where all those offers came in. Those are real-world data points. So it was a big endeavor because it requires two things. One, it requires building out the places to put that information, and then it requires incentivizing all the players in the company to actually put that information in. So making contests around those things and then anything along those lines helps to do it. So that was a big tool that we had to leverage that. And one thought on the valuation world, I think there's an important question to lead off with your clients that you're working with in terms of valuation if you want to go down that road. I don't think it is, what do you think your business is worth? I don't think it is, what do you need to get out of the business to maintain your lifestyle? Those are important questions, and you want to have those discussions. But I think the important question to lead off is, what valuation do you think a prospective buyer would put on your business? It frames it in a very different light. And every time I've asked that question, it's usually a bit of a pause. And they usually come back with, well, I don't know. And naturally, that leads into discussion, which I'd like to find out. And that's where we can lead off in terms of going that route. So.
On the subject of tools, over the last year, I've talked to 400 of y'all, and I appreciate all those opportunities. One of the things we recognize, like when I asked you that question, are you working with a business owner who either leases or owns commercial real estate? Every hand went in the air, right? So there's clearly a need, and most of you understand what it is that we do, and that you believe that there is a thread or a unique path to add additional value to your client relationships by exploring this commercial real estate advisory piece. But what we realized after having all these conversations is that you just didn't know how to start the conversation. And so the tool that we built, and it's not very creatively named, it's the top 10 questions that advisors should ask business owners about commercial real estate. Like, it's on brand, right? It's very on the nose. And what it's intended to do, really, the tool is intended to do a bunch of different things. The primary purpose is to help you as fellow CEPAs. You have the existing relationship with your client, and I want to help you strengthen it. So this tool is designed really for your benefit first, which is to give you unique questions to ask to your clients that likely no one has ever asked them before, because these are not brokerage questions. These are not they're big picture questions about commercial real estate. So even if it goes nowhere, you will have strengthened your relationship with your client just by having to ask really creative questions. But the design of the questions also are such that they're not easy answer questions, but they're not trick questions either. They're ones that are designed to cause the business owner to give it some thought. And so it's not, do you lease or do you own? Is it A versus B type of stuff? Like, they really have to think about it. And what we find is that thought process alone commonly leads to the business owner self-identifying a blind spot regarding their commercial real estate scenario. And for you as CEPAs who have that relationship, that's your path. When they self-identify a blind spot, you're not selling them anything anymore. You're not trying to deliver value. You're telling them, you just told me where I need to add value. And so now that gives you an opportunity to say, all right, there's something there, there's an unknown, we need to follow up, and I've got resources that I can bring to the table to help you do that. And then we're off to the races. Then we've got a new path. We're on a course of discovery regarding how we can help them. So that tool's been phenomenal. And it really almost turns into a unique triggering event type of conversation, because business owners get more comfortable talking about real estate, I find, sometimes than their business assets, because it feels closer to the personal leg of the stool for whatever reason.
So Jason, we'll just stick with you and walk back down the panel back to kind of round us out here. You heard us talk this morning, and we've been talking in depth about how do I break down complexities for business owners, how do I drive more clarity. So my question for the whole panel would be, what is your clarity moment that you bring to the table, and how can a CEPA partner directly with you to make it happen?
Yeah, the clarity moment is there's so much that your business owners don't understand about their scenario, right? And ultimately, it creates an opportunity for you as their advisor to shoot layups. Like, it's so easy for us to solve it if we just get them talking about it, right? We just got to ask them some questions to expose their unknowns, their weaknesses, their structural flaws, or their lack of data points, or their lack of baselines. Like, it's not hard. You just got to get them started, right? So that for me was that tipping point where, like, yeah, there's a unique path here, as long as we don't think it's about selling. It's not brokerage, right? Mm-hmm. It's truly strategic.
I think one thing that's important is to truly let them know how important they are to the business and keeping their eye on the ball. Of course, it's a complex process, and you don't want to overwhelm them with that, but let them know how complex it is to run their business. Sometimes they don't take that for fully ingest that and realize how important they are. And the last thing you want to be doing at the end of the game is missing free throws. So they need to keep their eye on the ball and run the business, and let us run the process. So if we can just work with them to educate them on that, and let them know how important they are to keep things running, to keep growing the business, keep their eye on the ball, or re-engage in the business. Sometimes owners have already taken one foot out. So the more we can get them back in, more we can get them focused on that, and the other things that we can take the load off in that regard, the better it is for them.
Cool. Fred?
I think Jason said it best, right? They don't want to be sold to. They want a partner. They want to know they have options. And a lot of times they're scared, right? They think they're limited. They think they know that there's 4 or 5 possibilities. They hate all of them. There's probably 34 or 35 possibilities, and they need you to uncover those. So I just think that them understanding that you are their partner, and then at the end of the day, there are dozens, up to dozens of you guys on one single team, depending on how deep and complex this gets. So just know that you have so many people here, and probably one of the largest cross sections of any industry ever are in this room right now, right? So I would make sure that whatever you do before you wrap this up, that you at least have your 3, 4, or 5 go-tos. And if you don't know what those questions are that you need to be asking, there are hundreds of people in this room right now that have been in your chair, right? So take advantage of that, all the networking and everything else that you're doing, because there's a lot of things out there that can be a bit overwhelming. But you have this ability here where a lot of the questions on your minds have people in this room have already answered them dozens and dozens of times. So just reach out and kind of figure out a little bit about where that next step is for yourself.
Zoe?
Yeah, I think what I would add to that is a business owner is going to feel most confident in moving forward if they know that their goals are heard and if they have looked at all of the options that are available to them. So someone is not going to be in a great position if they have only looked at one pathway. And so ensuring that your clients are actually looking at the full suite of options that are available to them, I think is just one of the most important pieces. 1, to reflect back to them that you've heard their goals, and 2, to make sure that you're doing right by them by giving them the optionality for them to make the decision about between the trade-offs across these options, which is the one that I am going to live with and I actually want to pursue. So that's a lot why we are working so much with advisors and with so many else to make sure that employee ownership is at least at the table. Not everyone is going to choose it, but we want to make sure it's at the table.
Cool.
Yeah, I think from a clarity standpoint, I think the first thing, like Jason, we've created after 25 years, we've really researched what are the top 6 to 10 questions that people ask that really get people intrigued and get them starting a conversation. So we have a one-pager as well for the business side of things, like Jason has for the real estate side. So we have that we can give people, and it just helps start that conversation. I think also one thing that we can do is obviously the RMA, like we talked about a couple different times, of really understanding what is that number, having that discovery call of, hey, is the timing right? Timing is so important. Jason mentioned that a little bit, because what happens with so many of these business owners is they don't sell too soon. They typically sell too late, right? And they hang on too long because they've never done it before. They don't know who to trust. They don't know what to do. In our study, 65%, they're deeply tied. And you want them to finish strong. We all want them to finish strong. But what happens is they finish like this. They get burnt out. They get tired, and they get unengaged. And what 12 months do you think the business buyer cares most about in their 40-year business owner career? The last 12 months. So not even 2025 anymore. It's the first 9 months, or the first 3 months of this year and the last 9 months of 25, and the next 12 months, because that's what they're buying is the next 12 months. So we're really helpful to help them understand how important timing is and what that means to them. And lastly, I think what we do a lot is we help them understand who the right M&A firm is. Or is it a business brokerage firm? Is it an M&A firm? Is it an investment banking firm? All deals are not the best for Cornerstone. So our job, we have another company, another alliance of 35 other firms and other groups that we've known throughout the years, that if we're not the right firm, we'll introduce them to another firm. In fact, I know Adam and Rebecca are out here, and I've referred 2 different deals to Rebecca because she specializes in veterinarian clinics. And we don't specialize in those. So we'll partner up with them or refer to them. And that's what we think we can bring it from a clarity standpoint, is who is the right firm to work with your client, because an investment bank should be working with a $2 million client, just like typically a business broker should be working with a $20 million client or $80 million client. So that's one thing that we pride ourselves in, is really being that air traffic controller to help find out what is the right firm, because there's no fee that's worth a reputation. And that's why we have an 85% closing ratios. We're really picky about who we choose and making sure that your client gets the right help to maximize the value.
I mean, tax mitigation services for ESOP, employee ownership, is really important. I think you need to get with, we work with financial advisors, attorneys, accountants, and we'll triage. Anybody here watching The Pit? The Pit, great show. You walk in that ER, you need somebody to kind of dissect what is going on with you today. That's what we'll help you do with your clients. And we can kind of focus in on taxes, control, employees, legacy, what's really important to them, and we'll help you triage that. And I think that the tax mitigation piece, 1042, is something that we work directly with you on and helping the client understand. And we usually try to really push them to get their CPA involved. And look, whatever method you're going to look at for exiting, look at what are the taxes with and without doing this 1042 election. Make sure the client knows, because you don't want to hear it afterwards, because you only have 12 months to do the 1042 election post-ESOP in a transaction for employee ownership.
Mike?
Yeah, and I'll just wrap it up by saying, the clarity comes when you actually look at the numbers and it's communicated well to your clients. We're exceptionally quantitative focused, so when we walk through that analysis that I referenced, we're not just looking at, if we're going to do an ESOP, this is off the shelf what it looks like, and here are the numbers. Do you want to do it? No, we're talking with your estate planning attorney. We're talking with their accountants, both on the personal and business side. We're talking with in-house or outside general counsel, figuring out what are all the pain points, what are all the strategies that have been laid out or put in place or thoughtfully put together for this business owner. And then if we were to use an ESOP, how can we enhance each of those? How we bring it all together and create one comprehensive document that you lay out for the business owner and said, this isn't just an ESOP, this is the best ESOP for all of your strategies that you've put in place with your trusted advisors through the years. This is what the roadmap looks like. This is how you accomplish it.
Perfect. Well, thank you. I appreciate everybody's expertise and insights. So this is the journey that I hope that we took you on over the last few hours this afternoon. We started by talking about mindset, understanding the business owner, meeting the owner where they are. We talked about generational characteristics and how we can leverage those. We talked about how owners are showing up likely to your meetings. We talked about the state of owner readiness research and how to leverage some of those stats and data. We kind of walked through then language. We talked about how do you take the technical methodology and make it more practical? How do you take the science of it and make it art? How can you use something like the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 key concepts of value acceleration and turn them into conversation starters? And between our two panels, the third component of activating yourself as a certified exit planning advisor is people. How do we leverage the people up on stage, the people out in the exhibit hall, and all of our fellow attendees here at the Exit Planning Summit? How do we leverage their expertise to help drive deeper relationships with business owners and more insights? So before we go to our social, I'd like to invite REAG up to the stage to kind of take us there. I see Scott coming from the back there. I was looking for you, buddy. And Scott and REAG, you've heard me talk about them this morning a bit. But REAG has been a true collaborator here inside of the EPI community. He's on the faculty, both on the academy side and on the CEPA side. I think that they've been here the last 4 or 5 years as our title sponsor here at the Exit Planning Summit. I'd like to invite their founding partner and CEO, Scott Mashuda, to the stage. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. I thought we talked about some walk-up music too, didn't we?
We can.
Some Thunderstruck or something?
We can get you walkout music, yeah.
That's all right. All right, very good. So thank you, Scott, and thank you for the introduction and for hosting this fabulous event again this year. So how about a quick round of applause for Scott and the entire EPI team. Certainly an event this size is no small effort, and they have really poured their hearts into this. So we're very proud to partner with you guys on this and really enjoy this event every year. So for those of you that I have not yet had the pleasure of meeting, as Scott said, I am Scott Mashuda. I am with REAG. We are, again, the title sponsor. It is the 4th straight year, Scott, for us to be the title sponsor here. And it's an honor and a privilege to be here with you again and to serve this community. Exit planning is an absolutely integral piece of creating winning outcomes for business owners. If you're not familiar with REAG, REAG is the only investment bank built for CEPAs, plain and simple. You'll see that messaging on the backdrop of our booth downstairs, and you'll hear that when you talk to our team. You'll see that in the way that we work and the process that we've built. Our sell-side M&A process is designed to fully integrate and enhance the exit planning experience for business owners. We're not driven simply by the execution of a cold investment banking process. Our process is human-centered, outcome-driven, and fully integrates the owner's value enhancement process to deliver institutional-grade sell-side M&A execution with a human-centered and goal-oriented approach. Not lip service. We integrate our process into the EPI framework. So the discover gate, the prepare gate, the decide gate. Why does all that matter? Well, you don't have to remember everything you learned in your CEPA course. Plain and simple. What you have to know, what you have to remember is to pick up the phone and call us, and we can help guide you through this. We do this every single day. So we want to partner with you. We want to partner with your clients and help them work through this process. The experience and the knowledge that we have, leverage that, please. That's why we're here. That's why we sponsor this every year, so that we can be helpful to drive the winning outcomes that we continue to talk about. So if you're interested in learning more about us and how to integrate us into your practice, how to leverage our expertise, please stop by and see us. We're at booth 607 downstairs. So you can have conversations with our folks and understand a little bit more about what we do. We are right next to the fun zone and kind of coming right outside of the food and the beverages. So we kind of triangulated the fun zone, the food, and the alcohol. That's how we roll. So, all right, I'll race you guys all down there. I'll meet you at booth 607. If you beat me down there, I'll buy drinks.